So thank you, everyone. This is Prime Hour of January 16, 2025. And as you know, we are recording this event here, and we will be putting this publicly online on YouTube and in our channel and in our website so that you are all aware that there is this recording and that the use that we do of this recording as well. Thank you so much. Amy.
Yes, the first thing I'd like to talk about before we get started is that if you plan on collecting a CCE for ICF certification from this hour here, we have to see you and you have to be actively participating. So you have to be on camera and stay for the whole thing. Just want to just make that disclaimer, make sure everybody's aware of that. So,
and this is because of ICF requirements, right? We really want to follow what the ICF is asking us to fulfill that particular requirement.
Yeah. So, Happy New Year, everyone. Here we are, a whole new year. So Elias and I, the last time some of you were here, we threw out a topic, which is a little different twist that we're taking with these now, is that we're going to bring a topic into the room. And today what we'd like to talk about is reflections, how we reflect back to our clients for deeper insight, greater awareness. And it's one of the things that some of you may or may not have had discussion about in your coaching education, but we'd like to drill a little bit into how do we help our clients gain more awareness outside of just asking questions. So that's what we want to bring into the room today.
And before we jump into the discussion of this particular topic, we would love for you to introduce yourself. So if you could use the chat room and put your name there and put your location where you are calling from. And if you would like for people to connect with each other, please put your email or a way for people to connect with you, or perhaps your LinkedIn profile. One of the benefits of Prime Hour is this connection and this interaction with each other. So this is a great opportunity for you to expand your network and connect with these coaches that are here in the room. And perhaps in the middle of this conversation, you're going to hear someone say something insightful for you. Please reach out to them at the end of the conversation and say thank you for your insights. And I would love to continue our conversation at another point. So this is another wonderful point of Prime Hour, community, community, community. And thank you. So we have California, Calgary, Chicago, Denver, Iowa, hello, Iowa, Atlanta, Michigan. Thank you, everyone. Boston, Rhode Island, New York City. Yes, thank you. Well, so we have all time zones of the U.S. represented here today.
And Canada.
And Canada. North America, should I say.
North America, yes. All right, are we ready to launch into our topic, Elias?
Sure, yes.
All right. So, Elias, why don't you first start talking about when you learned about...
reflections. Actually, a sneak peek here. We're going to talk a little bit about this in the Prime event that we have scheduled for next week. Next week, I don't know if you've seen on our announcement that next week we're going to have a free event talking about the myths of coaching. And one of the myths, just a sneak peek, is this idea that coaches only ask questions. Right? Our primary tool in coaching is just questions. Am I allowed to say something? Am I allowed to share an information? Am I allowed to share something that I'm noticing, right? And yes, there is the skill of reflection that is a powerful skill. One of the other tools besides questioning that a coach has. And reflection, I created a podcast a few weeks ago, a few months ago, actually. I had a guest, a friend of mine, Joe Simmons. He is a PCC coach. And Joe is also a motivational interviewing practitioner. How many of you have heard of motivational interviewing? Joe, Ed, anyone else? Motivational interviewing is a practice that it has been growing parallel to coaching and comes from the mental health industry specifically. But motivational interviewing, if you look at the core of motivational interviewing, it has lots of similarities with coaching. However, just like in coaching, we emphasize the use of open-ended question. The primary tool the motivational interviewers have is reflection. And in fact, when they are looking at assessing a motivational interviewer, they really look at the ratio of how many questions and how many reflections that particular practitioner was able to offer. And they favor more of reflection. They expect that you offer more reflections than questions. And motivational interviewing, if you listen to that particular podcast, by the way, it's podcast number 14, if you want to listen to that after the motivational interviewing is focuses on reflection and has been highly researched, like the amount of research that they do. You know, psychologists, they love the research and they love all of the papers and all of that stuff, which is wonderful. So they have done extensive research in motivational interviewing to see the effectiveness of this particular practice. And I did that podcast because I do believe that there is a lot from that practice that we coaches can learn from, especially the distinction between simple reflections and complex reflections. So let me continue here. I'm mindful that I'm talking a lot here, but simple reflections is simply what I heard you say, blah, 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 right? And you simply parrot back or paraphrase back what the client said. Complex reflection is really summarizing or putting what the client has said or what you're observing from the client into a very concise statement, that it's not necessarily exactly what the client said, but it is your interpretation of what the client has stated. So I can see right now the level of energy that you have right now. That's a complex reflection. This seems to be very important to you in this moment. This situation made you confused. These are complex reflection that a practitioner and a coach can use, and it's completely in alignment with our core competencies as well. Sometimes complex reflections I can see that there is this particular situation, and then there is that other situation as well. Right? It's a double-sided reflection. So anyways, we would love to talk about these complex reflection and see what you have been observing. One thing that we say in that episode is that we use complex reflections without even knowing that we do. So perhaps it's something for us to address and expand our skills here. But I'm talking too much, Amy.
Well, I want to add two things. First is some of you who've learned from myself or Elias in a level 1 course, we took this away from you. You'll probably all sitting here going, yeah, you did, in our learning. And it's so important that we get that foundation down of understanding that the client does the work and that our reflections aren't about us. They're very intentional to the client. So we had to take it away so you could build that muscle. And now what we're doing is reintroducing a deeper level of sharing. And the word I want to use here, Elias, that in that podcast that Joe had brought in, is we're guessing about what the client may be feeling, observing, demonstrating their behavior. We're guessing at it. And so the first thing I want to introduce around complex reflection is that it's a guess. It's not an emphatic statement. It's there for the client to look at and say, yes, that's true, or yes, and elaborate on it, or to say, no, it's really this. We have to leave that door open because really only the client can define what's really going on. We're just simply offering an outside observer's guess at what's happening. And so that's the come from, that's the mindset that we bring into these complex reflections. And it's an invitation to look at a different perspective, an outside perspective, and they can do what they want with it. So I think that's the first thing that's important to know about when we start to do these reflections. How many of you are already doing this? Are you doing it with confidence? Yeah? Good. Yeah, Joe's. Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, what is your experience utilizing complex reflection?
I do a lot of just how I observe them around their energy. You used that example earlier. That made you really happy when you said that, or you really changed your facial structure when those kinds of things to give observations.
Yeah.
Beautiful. This is like noticing the energy and the physical aspect of the client, or whatever the client is bringing beyond just what the client is saying, right? So that's beautiful, Kristen. Ed.
I have found that I have to check my assumption at the door, sometimes even while I'm reflecting, because I'll realize, oh, wait a minute, and it's in my head. This is the stuff that's going on. And I'll just say what I'm noticing and reflect back to them and say, what's going on with you, or be more open-ended. So it is a combination of reflection and inquiry. Because if I start to make an interpretation, that's usually meh. In a good relationship with a client, they'll tell me I'm all wet, but then I'll realize, okay, we went down a pathway. It likely narrowed the perspective, so I've learned to check myself.
Yeah, this is beautiful, because there is that distinction between something that I am noticing and the truth.
Yeah, right.
If we start believing that what I am noticing is it, then that's not coaching anymore, right? So I love that you notice, okay, I'm noticing something here, and this may be very valuable to the client. If I don't say anything, they're never going to be able to see that, because I'm here from outside. So let me share with the client, this is what I'm noticing, this and this and this. And that gives the client the opportunity to say, oh yeah, it is happening. No, Elias, this is, it's not quite that, it's this. The bottom line of this complex reflection, when it's well done, and this takes a lot of practice, right? But when complex reflection is well done, the effect of the complex reflection is similar to the effect of an open-ended question, right? The point of an open-ended question is to continue the inquiry, is to continue the thought process, is to continue to observe. If we offer a reflection that is simple, that is a simple reflection, there is no inquiry. It's yes or no, right? It's almost like a closed-ended question. But if we offer a complex reflection, it will trigger in the client, it will start in the client this process of yeah, yes, maybe, no, and they are going to be able to develop that even further. Mary.
Yeah. Thank you, Elias. I think that the more complex reflection is quite valuable with long-term clients, people that we've met with over time. And I think about a session I had yesterday, and knowing this person and having had multiple conversations over the past year. And I use that word noticing a lot. I think it is a wonderfully neutral way of observing without that being heavy-handed with this is how something is or drawing an assumption. But when you can start really seeing certain trends from previous conversations and connecting the dots, then you can bring forward a more complex reflection and observation or what you're noticing. And it does get the client, oftentimes their whole expression can change. They start to, in that moment, just really reflect on, I was here 3 months ago. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And again, some new awareness around, I got to get myself out of this. Now I have to do something new with this. So I found it quite valuable with people that there's a good coaching relationship developed.
And Mary, and Gregory, we'll get to you in 1 second. Why do you think that is?
It's probably goes to the depth of the coaching relationship, and the trust. What in this case yesterday, the conversation and the topic went in a really interesting direction where there was quite a bit of emotion involved. And so trust and comfort, safety with the coach. And again, that's built up over time. It's not first meeting, right?
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, because the trust and safety is paramount in complex reflection. Even if you say something significant and profound, sometimes clients won't take it in because they don't really know you yet. Like my clients know I say that stuff, I mean it. Like that's and because of that developed trust and the safety you've given them in the container, that's so important. Thanks, Mary. Gregory.
So Mary, it seems that building trust and safety is a crucial aspect for you when you establish or when you offer a complex reflection.
Yeah.
Sure is.
By the way, what I just did right now was a complex reflection.
Love it. In real time.
In real time. Gregory.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm thinking about the possible difference between Amy, when you started this off, you talked about it's a guess. And then Ed, you were talking about checking your assumptions, but I'm just thinking about the difference between, for example, saying to a client, hey, when you brought your manager up, I noticed your brow furrowed. I noticed your tone got sharper. You raised your voice. There's that, which I would say is objective, right? I'm mirroring back what I see, but it has a lot of potential. And then, Amy, I'm wondering, like, also what maybe when you started this, what we're talking about is just saying, hey, it looks like you're angry. And just thinking about the different, like I'm starting to make an assumption, right, on the ladder.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the value of one of those things sometimes over the other. And I don't know. I'm just thinking about that because I've done both, and I've also stepped in it when I have made an assumption.
Yeah.
And I've tried to label an emotion.
Yeah, I think that that's why complex reflection it takes practice and skill to understand what is the line. Because when we go and use and we immediately put sometimes we need to be careful in putting words into the client's mind that are not necessarily there. So when we choose to introduce a term, an emotion, what is the intention that we're going to do this? What is the level of trust and safety? What is the level of understanding the client system? that we are doing that? Is this okay? How will the client be able to receive that or not? How am I positioning it? Because if I'm positioning it as this is it, then it's not for us to do that, right? But if we are positioning in a sense of it seems to me, or as Mary said, I noticed, or I sense this. What is your take on that? And we continue the exchange. Then depending on the situation, right, we are going to be able to support the client to expand their horizon. But it's something for us to be very mindful. Just like a question, right? We have to be very mindful that question. There is not one question, not one single question that doesn't have a piece of the coach in it. Right? There is no such a thing as a completely neutral question. Reflections as well. So it's the balancing act there for us.
And it is a fine line, Gregory, before we go into our assumptions. That, again, is the coach's mindset is so important. Like what I tell myself about, I love to be wrong. So if I say, and I work with a lot of strong-minded, willed individuals. So if I say something like, your tone changed, all that, and you kind of look angry, what, and no, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed, right? So me being wrong allows them the prompt to be right about what they're feeling, experiencing, whatever it is. And I think when the coach brings that into the relationship, back to Mary's point about what have we built with them relative to trust and safety, my clients know they can push back on just about anything. And I'll pivot with them immediately. And I think it's more of a energetic thing than it is a thing we build with our clients to be able to do this. And I think when we get to a certain level of building the relationship and creating that trust, we can say just about anything that to one person who doesn't know us, who we don't have that relationship, might sound like an emphatic assumption. But to somebody we know, they know that's just a volley. We're just bringing that in for a volley of discussion.
It requires listening, right? And in motivational interviewing, they say that when we are wrong, when our complex reflection is not accurate, and the client comes back and say, no, it's not quite that, that is a huge positive aspect of coaching, of the process, right, of motivational interviewing, because it supports the client into saying, no, it's not that. It is that. And when the client goes into that other thing, then the client is able to express even more fully what truly is happening. So it gives the client the opportunity to expand and explore even further. So I'm curious, like some of you, we haven't heard from you yet. What's coming up for you as far as this discussion goes?
I think for me, I'm definitely new to all of the things, but I would say that I've used it without having a term for it. And I think it's that, I'm noticing it might be you've used this, and this word that, kind of fall along a negative continuum. Or is this something you're aware of? It, so like just kind of connecting it back to conversation. So I think having more awareness of the power that it can have in the conversations. And I like that you brought up the myth around, coaching is just about asking questions, because I think it allows us to, have permission to, very mindfully and intentionally, fire back those observations that can, like you said, get them to think a little bit deeper. You might not have hit it directly on the mark, but at least get them thinking around it. To shift their perspective.
Beautifully.
Thank you for bringing that up, Lisa. And as you master this more and more, you're able to be even more intentional with it when you use it. right? You know, it's more of a precision, like a surgeon's precision, that you bring these complex reflections in. And I, you know, I for one, and Joe said this on the podcast, Elias, is that as you really master this, you may find that your coaching sessions are as many questions as there are complex reflections. And I'll get into in a second why that is cool, from a science standpoint and a neuroscience standpoint. But Eric, first.
Hi, everybody. I was it's interesting because, Elias, when you first asked the question, I don't know that I have a lot of mastery in this in my own coaching, but I think as I think through how I do coach and how this does come up in my coaching sessions, I really think that there's a um uh identifying patterns in how and how you can identify and help with reflection, but identifying patterns in nonverbal cues that the coachee shows you. And then I was thinking the idea of the positivity of how this, even if you get it wrong, what that can do to open doors of awareness for the coachee. I know in my own personal life and in my own professional life outside of coaching, I see this happen where people will almost like throw a dart and they'll label you in a way to almost provoke some sort of response, awareness, something. And it seems that in a coaching environment, it would be incredibly key to have a high level of trust so that person doesn't feel that you're just trying to somehow create a response from them that might do more harm than good. Just an observation.
Beautiful. Eric, it's beautiful to see how you are bringing your personal experience in your personal relationships into the thinking process around this particular skill. That's another complex reflection.
He keeps doing that.
Linda.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate you saying that there isn't a question that doesn't have a piece of the coach, because it sort of relieves us in a way of, because we are taught sort of the pure ICF, I have to always ask questions, but we are human beings who are picking up on things. And I also appreciated what Mary said, that if you see the client multiple times, you begin to pick up on themes and words that they use over and over again. Sometimes I find that reflections are sort of using their own words. You've talked about the word freedom before. You've used this before. What does that mean to you in this decision, or something along those lines? And so also with Eric, opening the door to patterns of what you're seeing in words or behaviors or things like that. So again, I just agree that it does help to reflect once you do know them a little bit better.
Yeah.
Beautiful to see how you are paying attention to the conversation and connecting the dots for you, Linda. Thank you.
He can't stop himself. Sorry.
John.
Hey, everybody. I'm a word person, so I have a question about the term complex. But first, I just wanted to say the simple in terms of simple reflections, I have a long-term client of about 5 years. It seems like the entire it's the basis of our coaching relationship is reflection, simple reflection, where it's a chance for them to be heard and to hear a reflection of what they're saying, gives them a whole new insight into what they're thinking or what they want to do. It's sometimes seems like cheating, but that's what some clients need, I think. And so my question is complex. It seems like what you've labeled a complex reflection is more reflecting the energy or the nonverbal that you're aware of in the conversation, and simple is the verbal. So can you parse that a little more for me?
Can I?
Definitely. Yes, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah. So Linda just brought it up. Patterns of speech, used words over and over again. And it almost always, John, is based on what we've heard from them. Not almost, it always is based on what we've heard. We don't just grab something out of the blue. It's what we've heard either verbally or non-verbally. And what makes it complex, there are plenty of great opportunities and the time to just parrot back what's been said and make that tremendously powerful. What we're introducing here is going a step beyond it into complex reflection, in that we are taking what we're hearing verbally or non-verbally and reflecting it back to the client in a way, and this is important, that doesn't put them back on their heels in defense, but even if it's wrong, makes them lean in and move forward. It evokes awareness and leaves some residue. And what I mean by that is, has anybody ever gotten a complex reflection that just sticks with you? It's almost always in a complex, it sticks with you. That's interesting what John said to me this morning. It's interesting that he noticed I'm showing up that way, or with that energy, or that I'm saying these words every time we meet. You know, it lingers.
Yeah.
Does that define it a little better?
Yeah. So a personal example, a mentor coach I've worked with once or twice, or for quite a while, who might be on this call, picked up on my term "getting into the weeds," which I've used a lot, and it's become a focus for being more strategic in my approach to a lot of things, as opposed to being the producer or the person who figures out every last detail. So thank you. That helps.
Yeah. The term complex, let's talk about that. You know, this is the term that we borrow from motivational interviewing. So in motivational interviewing, they use the term simple reflection and complex reflection. So it's not that Elias and Amy created that term. And
one's good and one's bad, or less.
We actually debated when we introduced the aspect of reflection in our level 2 program. We debated if we were going to continue utilizing the same term as motivational interviewing or not, and we decided to do it because, you know, of all of the solid research that they are doing, and we want to utilize what they, you know, respect what the motivational interviewing process is doing. But it's something that we need to explain, because we talk a lot about, in the last Prime Hour, we talked about brief language, right? And we said we want language that is succinct and not complex. And we even use that word. We want simple, concise, streamlined language. In this case, the term complex means that this is a more robust reflection. And it's not just about energy and nonverbals. It can be the verbals as well. Like, for example, when I did that complex reflection from Eric, I said, it's very clear that you're using your personal experience and bringing this to your coaching development. That has nothing to do with nonverbals. This is exactly what Eric said, but I put in a different statement that was comprehensive of everything that Eric has said. And John, I have not heard a recording of you coaching that particular client that you mentioned, But I would not be surprised that some of these reflections that you are giving that client are what we would call complex reflection.
Yeah, I'm starting to think about that too. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Simple reflect. The other thing for us to pay attention between simple reflection and complex reflection is that simple reflection stops time. Right? The client says blah 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 blah, and you go and you say, "Oh, what I heard you say blah 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 blah." In that moment, the client is just like, "Okay, I stopped my processing. I'm just listening to you to confirm that what we did here." So it's almost like a pause in the development of the client, in the moving forward of the client, and it's very helpful at times. Right. But, if we listen to coaching recordings all the time, I'm always assessing for the ICF, and it's very mindful. It's very tangible when a coach is just like, what I heard you say, and you can see that the client stopped, that the juices inside the client's brain stops, and the client is simply paying attention. Right. In coaching, we always want the client to move forward. So complex reflection, when it's delivered very well done, you can see that the client did not stop thinking, that the client continues to process. So pay attention to that. Joe and David are waiting patiently. Joe.
Now you're all waiting patiently. Thank you. I'm just thinking about our pursuit of the truth in coaching. And when we started talking about reflection, it came up early in the conversation. I can't help but notice that these complex reflections, just by virtue of often being a guess and of being a little bit more essence driven, can carry with them some level or maybe trap of judgment. And I'm wondering how we toe that line to ensure that the momentum continues and that the trust and safety continues. And I know it's going to be client by client, conversation by conversation. But I also just notice how this comes up in my practice, where people just very nonchalantly say things like they're the truth. Elias always does this. I am just this person who does that.
Mhm.
Is that the truth? And can we explore that? Right. So I don't know. I feel like there's a role in complex reflection there. I don't know how to temper the judgment.
Yeah.
There's your truth, my truth, and the truth.
And that is an art, Joe. That's why we introduced the aspect of complex reflection only at level 2 of the training, because first we need to enhance our listening, enhance our presence, be very, very mindful of our biases, where our mindset as a coach, where are we coming from, where are we positioning ourselves. All of this needs to be very much clear for us to step into the place that I am going to dare rephrase what my client said in front of me. That's a very precious moment. And if we dare to go in that place, we better be with our space very clear, because otherwise judgment, assumptions are going to come in place, and then it's not for the client, it's not helpful for the client, it's just for me. Yeah, beautiful. David.
So I am reflecting on conversations I've had with some clients recently. And one thing that I keep coming back to is a couple different clients where I've noticed that my reflection is a measure of their statements versus their stories. So they may claim, I'm just thinking about a couple instances, they have claimed a statement, not unlike Jill, what you shared, I am this, or this is what's most important to me, something definitive. And over the course of the conversation or multiple conversations, I've heard patterns that don't align with the statement. And so I just think about how I've brought that up and, unapologetically, but with care, said, hey, I've heard a couple different things from you. Heard you repeat the importance of this in terms of your priorities. And I'm also noticing patterns of what you've shared in terms of your interactions and how these priorities may play out. And I'm seeing a disconnect. Is it a disconnect? How do you make sense of those differences? So that's what comes up to me as I'm listening to this conversation.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's beautiful. That's, when you have a double-sided reflection, the client is saying one thing, but they are behaving on another thing, and you observe that, right? Using complex reflection is the perfect opportunity, the perfect tool to just present that to the client. I notice what you're saying here, and you're doing this over here. How is that for you? And not necessarily immediately assume that is a conflict, because we may be seeing a conflict, but it may be completely fine with the client. The client has a reason why these two things are happening, right? So, and we may not be able to see it. So we just present to the client, I see this and I see this too. How do they come together? What is the connection here? And then the client is saying, oh, they are not connected at all. Or they may say that, or they may come with a complete reason why they are there. We don't know. But if we don't share, right, if we don't reflect that back, the client will never have the opportunity to put those two things together. Beautiful.
Lisa asked here, would this be challenging the client? And I just want to answer that out loud, because when we talk about challenging and coaching, it's more to stretch the client into bigger, broader, going farther than they would ask of themselves. Complex reflection can be part of that, but it's not all of it. Sometimes, and this is, one of the core competencies is to evoke awareness. And we've been, saying it since 1990, whatever we did. But the question is always how? And we used to say the coach creates awareness, which was way off base. But this complex reflection is really the tool to expand awareness within the client. And I want to bring one thing in, and then we have to talk about some things coming up, at least. But one of the things that was said in the podcast that you'll hear if you listen to it, questions activate the prefrontal cortex. Okay, that's where thoughts about actions and emotions are activated. Complex reflection, however, activates the limbic system. Okay, and that activates behavior and motivation and long-term memory. So we're actually hitting a different part of the brain with complex reflection. And in doing that, what the whole notion from motivational interviewing is around what they do is to strengthen a person's own motivation for change. So it's they're intrinsically motivated versus external motivation. And that's what we're doing here in coaching, right? We're trying to, whether it's internal in the workplace or wherever it is, we're trying to get people to be intrinsically motivated by their own truth, by their values, whatever it is. And complex reflection is a huge tool to do that and evoke awareness.
It's where the term motivational interviewing comes from. And the whole process is to support the client into motivating themselves towards change, right? That's the idea. And it's beautiful to see, if you have an opportunity to see a motivational interviewing session, and there are many of those online for you to see, and see a whole session where the practitioner, the only thing that the practitioner did was to offer complex reflections. It's really, really powerful to see that. So it's another opportunity for us, and I would encourage you all to play with it. And play gingerly, play carefully, right? Pay attention to the assumptions, pay attention to the judgments, pay attention to introducing things to the client that are not necessarily what the client is ready to listen to. It's something that it's a more advanced skill, that it takes practice. And I think that primarily make sure of where your coaching mindset is. The moment that we go into hierarchy, right, that I know, then we are no longer coaching. So keep that in mind. Joe, very quickly, you had your hand raised, and then I have a couple of announcements here.
Yeah, I just noticed a tendency that comes up in mentor coaching. I was reminded, if you're going to reflect. If you're going to ask a question. And the tendency for me becomes, oh, brilliant reflection. And now I'm curious about something as a result about that, or I want to save the client or whatever it is, give them a launch point. But there tends to be this beauty of when you just reflect and let it sit. Do you guys have any thoughts about how maybe what could lead us to a reflection that we're comfortable letting sit there by itself without a follow-on question?
Oh, they're beautiful. Yes, just and actually, complex reflection do not need complex reflection. Don't need a follow-up question. You just drop them and you wait.
It's the same restraint you have to learn in asking questions and not stacking them or pre-contextualizing them. It's the less is more mentality. And the idea with complex reflection is it just drops, right? You just drop it and because the idea is the client needs to work with it once you give it to them.
Yeah. And all of the language skills follow, like what we talked about in the previous Prime Hour. And if you were not here in the previous Prime Hour, you can go and watch the video there. It's on our Prime Hour page. But we talk about, succinct language. We talk about being intentional, less is more. All of this it applies to complex reflection. If it becomes a paragraph and we start telling a whole story, that's no longer complex reflection. That's putting ourselves in the spotlight. Okay. Anyways, before we would love to hear from you what your insights from this conversation here, and hear from some of you that have not spoken yet. We would love to hear that. But before we do that, I want to mention to you our next Prime Hour is Monday, February 10th at 4 p.m. Eastern. So put that on your calendars, because we really want you to come here and participate in this conversation. We are going to have another topic. So put that on your calendars as well. If you want to listen to the podcast that this conversation is based on, is our Prime Space podcast, and it's episode 14. And please subscribe. And please give your, grading and your stars and thumbs up. You can listen to our podcast on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, or you can go to our YouTube channel as well, and you're going to have the podcast there. Please make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Okay, so that's very important. Open registrations. We have open registrations to both our level 1 and our level 2 programs. So if you are interested in starting your coach training or continuing in your coach training, let us know as soon as possible so that we can put you into the cohort going on. I mentioned earlier today that we have a new Prime event happening next week, and the title of the Prime event is Coaching Myths. I forgot the title of it, but it's talking about the myths of coaching. And one of them is, as I said, is the idea that coaches only ask questions. But we have 8 myths that we are going to be addressing during that event. It's a free event, so please go to the website and register for it as well. We have a new blog. It's a brand new product that we started here. Amy just released the first post of our blog. It's called Prime Edge. So please go to the website and read the blog. And if you have any comments, please send us an email. We would love to hear from you as well. And I am also opening up registrations for my Prime group. This is a mentor coaching group that goes throughout the year. And we have two cohorts only this year. One is for coaches that are at ACC and PCC level. And one is for coaches that are getting ready for their MCC level. And I have just a few more spaces for these Prime groups. If you would like to partner with me during this year to polish your skills, regardless if you are getting ready for certification or not, the idea is to polish your skills and build your skills further. It would be a pleasure to work with you as well. Just let me know what you want to do. Okay? Anything else we need to add here, Amy?
Nope, you got it all.
So we have a few more minutes. I would love to hear from you. Going into our core competencies here, what is your takeaway from this conversation today?
Mary came off mute. I know you want to say something, Mary.
I'll just say a lot. I took a lot of notes today, and it's the collective thank you to the group, because there are so many great insights led by Amy and Elias. This was such a rich conversation, and these are always valued, hours of the month. So thank you for that.
Who else? I see that Linda wrote in the text in the chat here, there isn't a question that doesn't have a piece of the coach. Yeah, absolutely, Linda. Thank you for that. Eric.
I thought one of the things I found interesting was this idea that what we do as coaches could create a reaction or could cause a different part of the brain to be I don't know, I'm losing my words, but activate. Thank you. It would activate a different part of the brain. I'm wondering if there are other insights that you might have, like for verbal versus nonverbal, open-ended versus like how we might be able to enrich the coaching conversation if we're focusing too much on activating one part of the brain. And I know that's a whole different topic, but
it's a whole different topic, and perhaps something for us to address here at some point. It's the whole neuroscience of coaching. It's a huge field of coaching, a trend that is happening in the industry right now. And I highly encourage all of you to be mindful of that. And so many books have been written now about the neuroscience of coaching, and in events and courses around neuroscience of coaching. Coaches Rising in Europe has a beautiful neuroscience of coaching program that is beautiful. And
we normally have one on this call, by the way, who's not here this week. So next time he comes in, we'll jump him. How's that?
Ed.
There's my takeaway is sort of this odd reflection is simple in its complexity and complex in its simplicity. And I don't mean to be clever, but it really is true. I think, to me, the more succinct I can be in reflection that is driving meaning, the more effective it is. And I really appreciated the comment about the sort of repeating the verbiage shuts off the flow. And that to me, that's a really good grounding comment. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. John.
I've been to a Prime Hour since this summer, I think. And it's really it's delightful to come back. And I love this topic. I feel like reflection is something that a coach who listens well can really benefit from, and to get that there are more distinctions to the idea of reflection than I was aware of, and this whole bit about intrinsic motivation. I mean, it's a rich area, and I look forward to learning more. So thank you. I mean,
Wonderful.
I'm a minute early. I may have said that, but thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. Everyone, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you back here in February, on February 10th. And again, if you have any questions or if we can be of support to you, just let us know. Go to primecoachingacademy.com and reach out to us. We would be so glad to connect with you and continue the conversation.
And
All right?
join us for the
conversation
myths.
with each other.
Yeah. Join us for the myths webinar too. We'd love to
Next week. Yes.
Next week.
If you are joining us, make sure that you register for that event so that we have you on the mailing list for the myths as well. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much. I will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.